Hello you beautiful misfits and welcome to the third of this year's Pixel Burn E3 Blitzkriegs with a slightly later than planned retrospective of the Nintendo presentation, which should be shorter than the other two at least, since A, Nintendo haven't done traditional conferences per se in a good number of years now, and B, they tend to keep them concise, which is a point in their favour from the get-go. Which, after a brief pre-show with ads for Pokemon Let's Go and Mario Tennis Aces, kicked off with the trailer for Daemon X Machina, a big, loud, ludicrous extravaganza about giant anime-style mechs fighting each other to a rock soundtrack, aka two things guaranteed to bypass my adult cynicism and catch the eye of my inner 14-year-old. Because while I like games with well-crafted stories exploring profound themes about society or the human condition, and with characters that feel like real people and other stuff I, as a supposedly mature, functioning, sophisticated adult, am supposed to prefer, you show me a giant robot messing up a gianter robot with a laser sword and I'm all up in that quicker than you can say fuck yeah. I mean, it's giant robots fighting, innit? What's not to like? Will it have a story? Probably. Will that story feature profound ruminations on humanity and society? Possibly. Most likely not. Who gives a shit? It's anime robots beating up other anime robots. The only downside is that it's another participant in this E3's running theme of not being out until sometime next year. Oh, and it's a Nintendo exclusive, of course, so no massive mech melees for you if you don't have a Switch, like I don't. Something I hope to rectify in the not too distant future. After that energetic intro came a nice, part sepia tinted trailer for some Xenoblade Chronicles 2 DLC called, to give it its full name, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torna the Golden Country. Try saying that 10 times after a few drinks. It's due out on September 21st, it's set 500 years before the main game's story, and that's all I'm going to tell you about it. Chiefly because I know bugger all about the story of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and I don't want to risk accidentally spoiling anything about the main game for people who haven't played it yet and have them yell at me for it. So let's move on instead to Nintendo of America's Reggie Fils-Aimé standing in what may or may not have been a real house. You can never be too certain of such things when Reggie's about. One minute he's standing in your living room all cheerfulness and smiles, then BAM! Your house is disassembled before your very eyes and you're left homeless. Fortunately that didn't happen this year. The house around Reggie remained solid and unaltered while he posed the audience a question.
Where will Nintendo Switch take you next?
Hopefully not to emergency accommodation. Actually, it was a rhetorical question Reggie already had an answer for.
To a smashing invitational cheered by fans and challengers?
Oh my, what could he possibly have been referring to? Ah, but the Smash goodies were being saved for the end. First up, Nintendo had Pokemon stuff to sell, specifically Pokemon Let's Go, a sort of remake of 1998's Pokemon Yellow, which was itself an enhanced version of Pokemon Blue and Red, for the Switch. I say sort of there because, while game director Junichi Masuda considers the game to be a remake of Pokemon Yellow, there are some notable differences, chiefly in how you capture wild Pokemon, which is the same way you do in Pokemon Go, by slapping your balls in their face until they submit. The game will still have more traditional Pokemon battles, but they're only with other Pokemon trainers, including other players, so really this installment should be considered more as a bridge between regular Pokemon and the casual friendly, exercise encouraging, dead body locating Pokemon Go. A digital shepherd's crook with which Nintendo probably hopes to nudge fans of the latter towards the former. So if you're a hardcore fan of all things old school Pokemon, looking to this as a way to tide yourself over till the release of the next proper core Pokemon title for the Switch, currently still in development, you might be a smidge disappointed. The other Pokewatsit Reggie showed off was a custom controller in the form of a tiny little Pokeball, usable only with Pokemon Let's Go and also, interestingly, the smartphone only Pokemon Go, what leads kids into traffic. It'll be out in November alongside Pokemon Let's Go and available to purchase for only 45 quid. 45 fucking quid! You could buy a copy of Hyrule Warriors for that. Still, you get the Pokemon Mew with it at least, meaning you don't have to run Widdershins around the Pokemon Tower until you're diagnosed with Lavender Town Syndrome, prompting your doctor to call your uncle, who works at Nintendo obviously, to come and unlock Bill's secret garden where you can then catch a Peekaboo that's able to push the truck Mew's hiding under. Or use a Game Shark. Up next was 4 people— oh fuck, it's another Mario Party. 'Twas inevitable, I suppose, for verily unto each Nintendo console generation must come a new Mario Party installment, in this case just called Super Mario Party, to transform otherwise cheerful, pleasant gathering of friends into a crime scene with possibly at least one body outlined in chalk. So if there are some people you want to irrevocably cut out of your life and you own a Switch, your key to doing so will arrive on October 5th. This tank minigame looks interesting though. After that came yet another kick in the nuts for fans of the Wars series, be they Game Boy Wars, Famicom Wars, Super Famicom Wars or Advance Wars, by way of this trailer for another Fire Emblem installment. Because Intelligent Systems believe 10 years still isn't long enough for you to wait before you get another Wars game. For the record, I've not played either series, although I've heard they're both very, very good. But I'm British, so I have to root for the underdog. Being the Wars series in this case. It's the law. Fire Emblem fans might argue that this new one is the first home console installment since 2007, but that conveniently ignores the fact they still got plenty of Fire Emblem games in the interim. They were just on 3DS. Anyway, I know precious little about either series, so all I've really got to say is, I guess that fake pre-E3 leak about a new Fire Emblem game turned out to be real after all. It just wasn't called Lustrous Daybreak. Anyone can get lucky. After that came a bevy of game clips, trailers, announcements and other goodness, starting with the PUBG usurping, parent-worrying global sensation Fortnite, for the Switch obviously, which could have been surprising and exciting news if it hadn't been leaked by a Nintendo eShop update the week before. This was one of those "and you can play it today" announcements, giving parents precisely 0 time whatsoever to lock their Switches away before their Fortnite-addled offspring could spirit it away into their school bags. This was followed by an announcement for Overcooked 2, sequel to the original multiplayer crazy cook-off game where you and some chums race to prepare specific meals in various hazardous locations retrofitted with kitchen utilities. The sequel brings some welcome improvements to the original, like the ability to toss ingredients to other players, while also removing some of the fiddliness of food preparation. And all in all looks like another of those titles that seems really well suited to the strength of the Switch. Much like Killer Queen Black, a port of the 10-player real-time strategy platformer Killer Queen, and not a character invented for a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure meets Dragon Ball Super crossover fanfiction. Original content please do not steal. The original Killer Queen is perhaps best described as half StarCraft, half Joust, and if this is the first time you've heard of it, that's probably because it's exclusive to arcades. This Switch port knocks the player count down to 8, necessitating some tweaks to the gameplay, but does come with enhanced graphics, online multiplayer, additional weapons and move sets. Those last two being rather significant given the original arcade version only has one control stick and one button per player. Other games featured very briefly in this segment include Arena of Valor, a new version of Minecraft, Sushi Striker, a Donkey Kong DLC for Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, another Just Dance, Starlink Battle for Atlas, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, the Splatoon meets Naruto-esque Ninjala, Carcassonne, another FIFA, Ark Survival Evolved, Wasteland 2 Director's Cut, Paladins, Fallout Shelter, SNK Heroines, Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, Wolfenstein 2, Mega Man 11, Mario Tennis Aces, and the best JRPG I have ever played. That last one being better known to the rest of the world as, well, The World Ends With You. There was also confirmation that the Switch version of Dark Souls would be out this summer, assuming it isn't delayed yet again, as well as a version of the FGC unifying Dragon Ball Fighters coming September 28th this year. Oh, there was also something about Octopath Traveler, but that's out already because I was later with this video than planned, and any of you who are interested in that game are probably already playing it. The absolute gem of this segment, however, was Hollow Knight, of course, which you should definitely get if you own a Switch and enjoy Metroidvanias, because it's out now. As well as being one of my top games of 2017, it's also an absolute bargain at only 15 quid, or your regional equivalent, on the Nintendo eShop. So if you own a Switch and you haven't bought it already, then do so as soon as your available funds permit, because not only is it 1/3 the price of that gimmicky, overpriced Pokeball controller, it'll also give you hours more fun than that ever could. Unless maybe you have very specific plans for said Pokeball controller involving certain bodily orifices and its vibrate function. We then came to the primary focus and conclusion of this year's Nintendo conference, which was all things Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Normally I wouldn't be too interested in this, but this year I started semi-seriously getting into fighting games, and Smash somewhat resembles a fighting game, right? Brought to us all from the Nintendo Development Center in Kyoto by Masahiro, why don't any of you use all these special items I spent literally years of my life working on, Sakurai himself, who immediately jumped into revealing which fighters from previous games or from other third-party titles have secured a place on the game's hallowed roster, because that's all anybody who plays Smash ever really wants to know about a new iteration of Smash. Who's in it? So we got a very long procession of Smash characters that made the cut, like Samus, Mario, Kirby, Bowser, a fistful of Links, Donkey Kong, Fox, Falco, Marth, Shake, the villager from Animal Crossing, Mewtwo, Meta Knight, Sonic, Jigglypuff, Roy, Olimar, Diddy Kong, Lucario, Lucino, Robin, Mr. Game & Watch, Dr. Mario, Rob, Duck Hunt, Bit, Palutena, Corin, Bowser Jr. Fucking hell, does this list never end? Nope, not really. Exceedingly long story short, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has all the characters from all the previous ones. You want to play a Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid and Super Smash Bros. Brawl? You can play as Snake, albeit with a disturbingly noticeable severe arse deficiency, or SAD for short. What the hell has happened to your derriere, Snake? What would the boss say? Methinks someone hasn't been keeping up on the basics of CQC. Anyway, want to play as Link? Which flavour? How about Ice Climbers? They're back in. Or maybe an Inkling, complete with ink-related weaponry like the Ink Roller and Splat Bomb. Want to play as Mega Man? He's in too. Pokemon Trainer? Now in boy and girl versions. Want to get your Falcon Punch on? Of course Captain Falcon's here. Don't want to play against Bayonetta? Yeah, she's in this one too. Although she may not be quite so terrible to play against this time, since according to Sakurai, the number of changes between this Smash and the last Smash number in the tens of thousands. Although it would be rather amusing if none of them whatsoever applied to Bayonetta. Well, I'd find it amusing. Some of these changes mentioned were improved air dodging, with excessive dodging leaving you more open to attack, as well as a bunch of new special items that nobody whatsoever in the Pro Smash scene will ever even see, let alone use. Sakurai's going to put them in anyway though. Officially it's because he wants normal, non-pro gamer people to be able to enjoy Smash. Although by now, several games later, his reasons have probably been distilled into a pure concentrate of stubbornness, with maybe a hint of spite. The game will also be compatible with GameCube controllers because apparently that's very important to people who play Smash. Not my preferred control method of choice, personally speaking, but at least it wasn't the N64 controller. Couldn't stand that fucking thing. While all the characters from all the previous Smashes are confirmed to be returning, not all the stages will be. Some of the ones confirmed for this new installment include Spear Pillar, Mario Galaxy, Peach's Castle, Green Hill Zone and Spirit Train. So if you have a favourite stage not mentioned here, there's a chance it might not make the cut. At least not in the retail release. There's always DLC. But fans at least get every character from every previous Smash game, especially all the third-party favourites like Cloud, Snake and Sonic. Their inclusion is always a bit shaky due to the vagaries of licensing rights, so it's good to know fans of them won't be left out in the cold. The inclusion of Nintendo's own stable of characters was guaranteed, of course, but even then I really can't think of a single relevant Nintendo character that hasn't been included on the roster here. Not counting monsters like Moblins or Goombas, or tertiary characters like Toad of course, they usually pop up as trophies and whatnot. No, I'm referring to a proper, worthwhile, full-fledged character in their own right that people actually give a damn about, included as a fighter. Nope, still can't think of anyone Nintendo might be missing. Nobody worth a damn at least. Oops, I almost forgot, there is a new addition to the roster I neglected to mention. A certain recurring nemesis who is both a staunch fan favourite and well known for his predominantly purple appearance. Ridley from Metroid, of course. Incidentally, Ridley's inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was, sadly, the only vaguely newish Metroid thing announced at this presentation. So I hope you weren't expecting any news of Metroid Prime 4, because there wasn't any. Not a sausage. And with that, the presentation came to a very abrupt halt. Well, if Sony were going to try and half-heartedly copy Nintendo's Treehouse format, it's only fair Nintendo nicked an abrupt ending from them. Jokes aside, however, it's time for my verdict. If anyone could be said to have nailed the format for these things, Nintendo would be in the running. Such are the advantages of having a pre-prepared presentation ready to fire and forget on a specific day of E3. It can be reworked and re-edited as necessary to best keep an audience's attention, even if it lacks some of the glitz and spectacle of the Microsoft and Sony conferences. Who needs either of that when it just works? As such, I didn't really find myself growing bored or rolling my eyes at anything in this presentation. Except Super Mario Party, but that's more a Pavlovian reaction. On a completely personal and biased note, I was really happy to see Nintendo shine a spotlight on its so-called Nindies. A lot of indie titles are a great fit for the platform and it's good for both players and developers that Nintendo have been so accommodating to them. Although one does worry a smidge about the risk of Nintendo getting a bit too accommodating. It'd be a tragedy to see the eShop get bloated with shovelware, asset flips and other crap, the way Steam has, through Nintendo being too eager to avoid a repeat of the Wii U. Although I don't think they need worry about that too much, not when the Switch is enjoying solid third-party support with the likes of Wolfenstein 2 and Fortnite, as well as Dragon Ball FighterZ, which I had to admit I'd probably double dip on if I ever bought a Switch. Returning to the Nindies for a moment, I was overjoyed to see Hollow Knight get a decent amount of the spotlight. I even stuck around afterwards to watch a bit of the Treehouse stream that was showing it off, although that was mostly because Team Cherry were demonstrating some of the third piece of completely free DLC they'll be releasing for it soon. Yep, 3 free DLCs. Have I mentioned how much insane value for money this game is? Just fucking buy it already! The downsides of this conference were trivial in the grand scheme, though not unnoticeable. Some people have complained at a lack of major announcements or teases for future new Mario or Zelda installments, but come on folks, be reasonable. The Switch has only been out for a little over a year. Give it a few more months at least. Although that's not to say I completely disagree with that particular line of thinking. I'm especially referring to the lack of anything new about Metroid Prime 4 after Nintendo teased people with it last year. Did you really not have anything new whatsoever to show of it? Not even a pre-rendered teaser clip with a flash of Samus's face or a glimpse of a Metroid? That would have been a much better way to end the presentation than just abruptly cutting to a black screen. There was also absolutely nothing in this particular presentation for 3DS owners, who must be feeling even more marginalised than they did last year. They're still getting Luigi's Mansion and WarioWare Gold however, so the system hasn't completely been put out to pasture just yet. Nevertheless, for all their talk of still supporting the 3DS, it's pretty clear Nintendo would really prefer you upgrade to a Switch. Perhaps the most significant downside to this conference was for anyone with absolute zero interest in Smash, whether as a casual appreciator of the series or the shower dodging tournament going variety. If you're neither of those, then the latter half of this presentation was probably a complete waste of your time, particularly if you were one of those aforementioned Mario or Zelda fans tuning in for any crumb of info, anything whatsoever about Nintendo's next big first-party title, i.e. another Mario or Zelda. Hate to break it to you peeps, but like it or lump it, this is their next big first-party title. In conclusion, this was another solid showing from Nintendo. It wasn't anything particularly world-shaking in terms of hyper-excitement for the general non-Smash adoring segment of the gaming public, but it was still overall a good presentation. It kept my interest, it showed off some good looking and interesting games, and it didn't make my arse fall asleep or cause me to binge drink. It doesn't come close to topping the Reggie and Iwata fight from Nintendo's E3 2014 presentation, but then I don't expect anything ever will. So with that out of the way, my coverage is all but done. Better late than never, eh? And better only a month and a bit late than about 6 whole bloody months like it was last year. All that remains for me to do now is sum up all the other conferences in one final pithy sarcastic video, because that's all the effort most of them usually warrant really. Especially EA's. After that I'll be taking a week off for my birthday to celebrate turning the ripe old age of 30-something. 30-something years old. After that it's straight back to the old regular mostly weekly pixel burn, the next episode of which will officially be my 100th episode. Sure, I've done over twice that number in terms of specials, channel updates, E3 summaries and other vids, but officially it will be Pixel Burn episode 100. But that's for the future. In the meantime, if you like this video then please click all the requisite buttons to convey that fact to the almighty YouTube algorithm. At the very least I hope you found it tolerable and will join me next time for one last video to sweep what's left of this year's E3 remains into the metaphorical bin. Meanwhile, until then, you can go now.